Good morning. Bang on 8 o'clock, I think, today. I think I might have hit it just right. You guys have your 9 o'clock on a Saturday little meme. David tries to hit this at 8 o'clock. Sometimes it takes 10 seconds to boot, sometimes 15. Can't quite tell. And the keg, we have a 1 keg day today. And a nice day. Yesterday was so nice. Beautiful, beautiful blue sky, a real roaster. Nothing like compared to what like Texas or whatever is getting these days, but it's plenty hot here. Good morning, good morning. Okay, we should have a peaceful stream today, I think. We have work to do. We have work on the block to do, stuff to show. The key block, to bring you up to date, in the last stream, you saw the key block get used for the first time. And we saw some test printing from it. I made a few color separation sheets. I wasn't quite sure at that time how many colors to use. I've spent the days over the weekend doing some color carving. One block, a dead easy one, is finished. It's just going to be the block for the background tone across the entire print. Another block, it's cut by knife and it's cleared, but it's not finished. We're going to start with this morning. This is the block for the darker tone on the leaves. If we finish that during the stream, we'll move on to the next one, which is the intermediate gray. It's going to put a darker tone on the background to make, excuse me, it's going to put a darker tone on the background to make the cats stand out a bit. The cats won't look bright white, but they will look lighter than the background. And then there will be a fourth one. I don't have it pasted down. It will be the spots on the cat. Paper is out. There's 2 printers upstairs today. One is Ayumi-san. She's doing more test printing, still more test printing on ramen cats. We're going around and around and around, struggling to get that one into good shape. No idea. It's going to get done or it's not going to get done. I don't think we're going to pull a plug in it. I think we're going to put it out, but we really can't find the combination, the light combination. But before I do this, there's one small package to open. This is no special deal. You know what it is. It's a package from one of our printers, and in fact, you can already see. Tear the tape off, make some noise. Oh, the printers. So one was Ayumi-san doing test printing ramen cats. The other one is Suga-san. She's doing a run of Fox Moon, one of Jed's Ukiyo-e Heroes designs. Last one. How do you deal with the cat's outlines? Beveled line on the color blocks. I'm not sure what you mean, cat's outlines. Oh, you mean the places where the... Yeah. You mean the places where the cat meets the outside. Well, because there's a fur line there, we want to see the background through the end of the fur, but we don't see the background through the middle. So at the moment, I'm just cutting it somewhere, whatever, in the middle of that thing. I don't think we're going to need to bevel it. I think it'll look natural enough. Your eye will be drawn to the main key block. We could maybe bevel it a bit. Don't think we'll have to. So there's already a conversation. I don't catch something to do Brazilian. I didn't get this. Okay, we have from Koda-san. You saw what it is. He's been doing a run of our image of a very, very old print for us, a Hokusai picture. Let's see how he did. There's no secrets here. We know what will happen. He's just got 100 prints that all look the same. This one I don't need to emboss his name on because a number of our generic prints that are in our catalog do have the craftsman's name on them. And a lot of them don't have the craftsman's name. Because, for a couple of reasons, they might be too small. Our Hunger Club prints, we don't put the names on because the prints are physically too small. And some other prints we don't. This one, it looks like it has a nice white space to put the name on. But no, we are going to trim this. This is going to be a bleed print. So when we send it out, it will look like this. And we don't want to put the craftsman's name inside the image itself. So this won't get that. The craftsman's names will be on the packaging, but not the print itself. And I guess over the years, prints will get separated from their packing. Doesn't much matter. We can't honor everybody for every single detail, every single time. And let's have a flip. How has he done on this? I mean, you know the answer. It's just going to be 100 identical sheets. For him, this is a walk in the park. There are no gradations to think about getting identical. All he has to do is, once he's got the color, turn his brain off, turn the TV on, and just go, go, go. This is very popular in the shop because of this deep, rich color. This is our Iwano paper showing its strength. You know, the paper is so deep and rich and strong. We can do this. He may have done this in one pass. I wonder, did he do it in one pass or two passes? For me and for most of our printers upstairs, we would need two passes. We would print this a bit lighter twice in order to get a good rich depth like this. For me, if I was trying to do this on a single pass, if I missed just one spot with the barren, it would not be strong enough. So to ensure I could get it good, I would lower the density of the pigment and do it twice. But a pro like Kubota, my guess is he's just gone, chip, shrug his shoulders, go, go, go. Interesting thing about this design, some of you might know or might not, or might have got it. This is called Mitate Kusaki Hake. Hake, 8 views. 8 views. Has somebody already got the answer from this? 8 views. Which one of the 8 views is it? And if you want to think about descending geese, the answer is no. Descending sparrow, it's evening snow, yes. And it even says so on the front, evening snow. And they've parodied this. The white, is it a peony flower? It's a peony, is parodying the idea of the snow on the distant mountains. And I don't have and have not seen the other ones in this series. When I made this, it was just simply as a one-shot. There was no idea at all to make a series of 8 views. But it could be something for a future project in Mokuhankan. Dig up the other designs, if they are known, and to finish off this Hokusai series, Descending Sparrow. Yeah. These are in the catalog. I don't think we're out of them just yet. We're printing in advance because we know we're going to need many more of these. Okay, let's put them away, get to work. For him, that's free money, you know. It's just free money. He said so. You know? Man, if we had 2 or 3 people like Kubota-san with his power younger, you just watch us go. We'd be publishing so many prints. The good old days. And maybe the good future days, I don't know. It could be that we're in the worst stage. Most of the craftsmen are gone. The paper is poor quality. It's either all going to crash and burn, or it's going to come back to life, partly because of our efforts. And we here could be actually at just the worst of it, and the future will get the benefit from what we've done here. Who knows? We'll see. Okay, it's going to be the 3rd stage here. Yesterday, during the shop time, I cut the lines here after the shop was closed. Well, actually, no, I was doing it while the shop was open still. Some of the customers were whatever. I scooped out the extra wood, and now here this morning, I'm going to do a quiet work, pop off this stuff. Find a place here. And it'll be easy for me today to wander and get out of camera range. So keep me in here. How would you look up that series? Okay, well, the Japanese title, as I said, the Japanese title is literally, it's Mitate, parody, Kusaki, grasses and, grass and tree, literally, Hakkei's 8 views. And it's by Koryusai. So if you're looking at a database, look up Koryusai 8 views. And if you're going to look up the Japanese title, look up Koryusai and then Mitate or Hakkei. And it'll give you your, it'll give you some. Koryusai, somebody's spelling it wrong here, Koryungami. No. Typical spelling for Koryusai is this. That's the typical version of how it's spelled in English. Koryusai. And I have no idea if any museum has them all or if there are known out there. All I know is that single image. That one, I believe I got from a book that was showing a collection in the Victoria and Albert Museum in England. But don't quote me because we're talking about a memory going back 30 years. So I don't know. Very, very nice weekend. Extremely busy in the shop still. The numbers that are coming up, the visitors and the sales, they're numbers from like a typical spring season. And even though we're rainy and smelly and there shouldn't be tourists here, there's a constant, doors just opening constantly. And again, it's YouTube visitors, people that have seen the YouTube channel dropping by. Not absolutely everybody, because some tourists just do walk down the street and come in, but overwhelmingly, it's YouTube visitors. And it just never seems to stop. It's good fun, The people that are coming in for the first time, they've never been here before, it's easier for me because I don't know them, I haven't met them, I don't remember them. And they know this, there's no embarrassment at all. They introduce themselves and away we go. But there are, of course, people that come in as previous visitors, and one such yesterday. There was a gentleman came in, actually he hung around in the background for a minute because I was busy talking to somebody else. And he hung around, and then when the other person left, he came forward to say hello. He was here with his daughter. And as soon as I looked up to see him, the panic kicks into my mind because I knew instantly that I knew this person. And not only did I know that I knew him, I knew that, this is actually a long-time person, a person who's been here many times, someone I know, a Patreon #1 supporter, Top Gun level person that David should remember. And I did remember him, but of course the problem is you've got to connect a name to this. And that's the difficult part. So it's no good saying, hi, yeah, I remember you, who are you? That's no fun, it's no good, and of course people would be, if it were me, I'd be insulted about that. He's been here any number of times. So we did the dance. I just put my hand up and said, just a minute, I know you, because I did, this was true, and I just said, just give me a second to pull it, to dig into the database. And he was okay, he rode with this, and he stood there a minute. He wasn't upset, and he just stood for a minute, and I got it, and I managed to pull it out, and I said his name, bang. And his face now, he's happy, he's cool, I'm cool, we're all good to go. But that's the happy ending. There were people in the same situation who I do know. I remember the conversations we had, it's this and this and this, but I can't pull the name out. And that's when it gets to be, oh my God, he's thinking, geez, all the support over all the years I've done for this guy, and he doesn't even remember who I am, And it's not true. I did remember him, but I just couldn't label it, But yesterday it was happy ending because I did get his name. And I even remembered last time he was here, it was the Sanja Matsuri. And I met him in the crowd outside. And that was a funny one. There's 10,000 people, and I'm pushing through the crowd. I'm going back to the shop, and there's Sebastian from Germany, and I remembered him in the middle of like a crowd of 10,000 people. So I've got some credibility with him, you know, in the fact that I've managed to do it a few times. So if next time I don't remember, I'll have a little bit of leeway. But the easy one is the people who are here for the first time, you know. And I say up front, have you been here before? Am I supposed to remember you? And they'll say, no, it's okay. And we can relax, you know. People are cool. When I forget, usually they say, I understand if it's okay. You know, you meet a lot of people. And it is true, but still, you know. Yeah, someone saying context is king. That's part of the problem, actually, because the context here is actually the same. I'm sitting in the same desk in the same room that I saw this person 3 years ago, but it's the same desk in the same room that I've seen 10,000 people over the intervening time, you know. So context can help, and context can actually get in the way, you know. People are okay. People are very good with this, or at least they're polite. What they say is polite, but whether they're heard or not, I don't know. I think if you know, when I do fail to remember somebody, you know, they may just think about their own situation. How good are they at this? If they met so many people, would they be able to remember them all? I don't know. Dangerous one here, little tiny area, you know, so easy to mix. Yesterday when I was doing the chiseling, this is clear, I'm going to avoid it, this is clear, but there's a little one in the middle there, you know, and it's really easy. There's another one here that I really almost lost yesterday. This little triangle here has to stay, and when I was clearing, it was just, Dave, remember that one, remember that one. And in fact, before I cleared, I put a little pencil line, warning, warning. It's so easy to pop them off by mistake when they're little ones like that. Okay, here's the conversation. John Becker, Dave goes, we've met somewhere, haven't we? Some say wood in this block doesn't cut as buttery smooth as the key block did. Absolutely no, of course not. This is not boxwood. This is a piece of cherry. It's got quite vivid, very strong grain. Cherry grows very differently between the summer and the winter. There's, you know, it's got a grain. You can see the grain, much more visible than, well, I don't have an open piece here. Any piece of cherry, you can see the grain. I mean, look at this. There's the summer and the winter and the summer and the winter, and the tree has different structure, and there's no way anybody, anywhere, would call this a buttery piece of wood. If I said I'm fighting it all the way, that would be wrong, but it's there, the grain is there. I've got to know which way it's flowing when I cut. Very, very, very different circumstance. And this actually, this piece, the one on the other side, and this one, this is not a bad piece of cherry, actually. You know, I'm not going to complain. We've had some real turkeys recently, but this is actually okay. We've tried to use the best wood we have upstairs in stock for this series because we know this British Museum series is going to be popular forever and ever till death do us part. Absolutely. So if we didn't use the best wood we've got, if it started to break down, you know. So the work I'm doing now with these blocks is very, very much an investment, you know. The customers are waiting right now, but that's only just today's people, you know. we will be, this series will be popular for a very, very long time. Clearly. So I'm investing. I'm building capital by doing this. You know, from the business point of view. I'm creating something here that will be used to create value for the world, for us, for our customers, for the world, for many, many years to come. If I do it right. Do many traditional craftsmen in Japan embrace the internet? Not very many, of course. No, no. The city hall where we are here, this is Taito Ward, Taito City, where I live. And we have no connection with this, but they have a group of people in the city office who are trying to help local craftsmen do this. And they've got a catalog, they've got guides, they've got maps, all this kind of stuff to help people, tourists, Japanese tourists, find these Japanese craftsmen. But there's no overarching thing. The government puts all this money into cool Japan to promote Japan overseas. They could do much, much better if they focused. And the thing like here, the traditional craftsman, some Japanese old dude working in a little shop by himself, he has no idea how to get his work out into the world. And there are thousands of such craftsmen around here. Many, 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 many. So I'm not typical at all. We're not typical. You know. Is it true that you could still make prints off the blocks that Hokusai carved? Hokusai didn't carve any blocks. Hokusai was a designer. But the story here, in the 1980s, the Adachi company here made a set of books, both sides of the Sumida River. They published a set of books based on the blocks left over from Hokusai's era. It was published by somebody, I think it was Saiju Zaburo. They published the blocks, they published the books. The blocks were put in storage in Japan in the early 1800s. Some Westerner in the late 1800s found them, bought them, took them to Boston. They slept in the Boston Museum of Fine Arts for many years, and in the 1980s they were temporarily brought back to Japan, and books were made from them. I have a copy of that book. They did a limited edition, I think, of 200 copies. They were worried about wearing out on the blocks. So yeah, if blocks are kept in good condition, blocks from X hundreds years ago could still be used to make prints if they are in acceptable condition. There's a video out there. We've talked about this particular episode on the stream before. There's a video on YouTube somewhere showing, yeah, somebody's got a chicken meister. Thank you, sir. Take your egg from the pile. Thank you. We have a copy of the book. Yes, we were showing it on the stream, were we? For show and tell one day? I don't remember. So it's the same thing then with these blocks that I'm carving now. What kind of future they are going to have? If my own business thrives over the years after I'm gone, then Mokuhankan itself will use these blocks. But it's quite possible that after I'm gone, this business would change and decay and close down maybe. The blocks would either be lost and used as junk or firewood or something, or they would be preserved. And then X years down the road, if there is still some kind of printmaking, people who can make prints, they could be used again. No idea. Where's my little poker? There it is. It could be the sort of fantasy story. You know, sometimes we see these as a TV program or a video or something. Some guy, they get the camera and they open the doors of this barn in Tennessee or something, and dust falls, and they go inside, and there's 30 old cars that are preserved from the 1920s. So this fantasy of these old cars in a barn somewhere, you know, this story comes around again and again and again. And you could imagine the same story, maybe if my business just didn't go anywhere and my house is still there. And sometime in the future, people like break open the door and they go down the stairs in my ome, and there's flashlights and it's dark and cobwebs, and there's shelves and shelves and shelves full of woodblock. And it's like Indiana Jones, you know. Somebody will find these blocks in 2172 or something, you know, whatever. Abandon hope, all ye who enter through these portals. Maybe I could leave a sign on the door. The last time I leave, sign on the door, the hex or the jinx or something. The jinx of the bearded sage or whatever. We should write the script and send it to Chat API or something. We've still got that little script running. I haven't spent any time keeping up on that one. I'm sorry. We started, didn't we? Started making a screenplay with the chat bot, and I haven't looked at it. Too much life getting in the way. Leave a treasure map that leaves nowhere. You could write the story, actually. The town my house is in, Ome, it's decaying and dying. The houses are getting empty one by one by one. Population is dropping. Schools are closing. Supermarkets closing. The town itself, in a generation, it'll still be there. It'll be a cluster of itself, whatever. So you could write the script. The abandoned houses everywhere, you know. And then nobody just bothers about it. They just don't try and clean it up. They just leave it there because nobody wants. So this abandoned town, the abandoned house, this house by the river, partly falls down. You know, you could write the script for this and make it happen. You know. Someone says, "Do I still feel like a stranger in Japan after so many years?" Well, no, I'm not a stranger. Of course not. This is my home. I'm happy here. I know where I am. People know me. It's okay. If you had amended the question, do I feel like a Japanese yet? The answer would be 100% no. Having spent my first 35 years in a different cultural climate, there's no way I will ever be Japanese in the sense of having the same viewpoint and ethics and basic feeling, no. But Japan now, this has become enough of a cosmopolitan environment that people like me can live here happily. There are a few Japanese here and there that don't really like the idea of having foreigners here. I think there's the same in any conservative culture has the same. But it's basically irrelevant. It's nothing to do with daily life. You know? No, I'm accepted here. The mechanics of it, I pay the same taxes as the Japanese. I own property, I run a business. I don't vote because Japan only allows voting for citizens. That's their prerogative. But no, it's my home, completely home. 37 years. We had the anniversary show. What's today? Monday. It was the anniversary on Saturday. I think we talked about it. I've been in Japan 37 years exactly, as of last Saturday. I've been living here 37 years. I came a number of times before that, but moved here on July 1st, 1986. This is home. And more now, of course, the people I meet and the people I see, you know, out on the street, everybody here, you know, whatever, is younger than me. Not only younger than me, they're younger than having been in Japan. I've been in Japan longer than most of the people I meet these days, you know. How come I'm not a Japanese citizen? I haven't asked for it. I know it doesn't happen automatically. It's different from a place like Canada. When you sort of get a landed immigrant status in Canada, I'm not sure about the American green card thing. I don't know about that. But in Canada, when you become a landed immigrant, the understanding and the acceptance is that this is the first step to citizenship. And then the rules will be, I think it depends where you've come from and what your language abilities are. The rules are that after X years or whatever, if your nose is clean, you can then apply for citizenship and you receive it. Japanese ID is different. I'm a permanent resident here, but that's a status all on its own. It's not the first step to naturalization. Japan doesn't do it that way. Having been here this long now, I could, completely my choice, I could go to the immigration office, ask for the application form, and I could request Japanese citizenship. It's not a trivial matter. It would be a very complicated application form. There would be lots of backup data put into it. The police will come and talk to my neighbors and stuff like this, as they did when I became a permanent resident. They don't just trivially rubber stamp this. But in my case, after 37 years of residence here, owning a building, being an employer, completely clean tax record, blah, 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 they would almost certainly approve an application for citizenship. I have no interest in doing this because to me that would be a bit fake. It would say, I want to be Japanese, I want to feel Japanese. And that's not me. The place I like, the people I like, the culture I like, but I know I'm different. So no, I have at my current state of life and with my current state of mind, I have no intention of taking that step. Maybe I will feel different at some point in the future. I don't know. Don't know. Don't really care. It's not something that feels important to me. Home is where I park my butt every night, and this is my home. Can't vote, so it's taxation without representation. But you know, like there's things to get upset about, and there's things to shrug your shoulders about. Soka, where I wouldn't get deported if an overzealous prosecutor. I don't. You know, I wonder if it would make a difference or not. I don't know. That's an interesting question. Should I get citizenship to defend myself against an accidental or inadvertent prosecution? It was funny, you know. That's funny. That came up in my mind the other day. Where was it? What was I doing? Talking to somebody. I can't remember who I was talking to. Oh yeah, it was at the Craftsman's meeting. A month or so ago, remember I went to the evening meeting of the Craftsman's Association, chatting with some of the young guys there. And I showed a bunch of our prints. And it was really clear the work we were doing here is spectacular. And that Dave himself, as a carver and as a printer, I'm as good as anybody in this field here. And when you count the fact that I do both, I'm actually, you know, I'm a top gun here. And I was talking to somebody about this, and they said, Dave, be careful, you know, if you stick up too far, someone's going to get, quote, jealous, or some super conservative person in the culture ministry is going to think, we don't want this situation where the foreigners are showing us up, where the foreigners are doing this thing better than the Japanese. You know, foreigners come over here to learn sumo, they might get the yokozuna, then they get beat up and out they go. But if I have come here, if I turn out to be better than anybody else at it, and if I make too much noise about this, you can understand the idea that a really conservative person or group of people somewhere in the powers that be would think, we got to get rid of this guy. And they could, you know, manufacture some evidence or whatever. The police officer could find something that he actually had brought in his pocket. You know, they could get rid of me. So this is a fantasy, but whatever. And someone's saying, would that defend me from this? Don't know. I've come this far, it's not something I'm going to lose any sleep over at this point, you know. They also said, Dave, you should take citizenship, otherwise you'll never become a living national treasure. And I just had to laugh and laugh and laugh. They don't understand how that sort of thing works. There isn't any way that that's ever going to happen under any circumstances whatsoever. And if you think it is, you're living in a deep, deep, deep fantasy world. You know, that's not how those things work. Coming along here, round and around and around. What's left? That's done, that's done, that's done. This area at the top here. We're coming along, 8:39. Big fan of YouTube channel Stop Immersion. Thank you. I frequently rewatch your meaning of life because it's difficult to understand. We had a good chat about that yesterday here in the shop. A couple of staff members. It was a bit quiet for a few minutes. We were talking about that, the meaning of life video. I rewatch your meaning of life video. I'm not sure. Thank you for the interest in it. You know, I tried to make things straightforward, But yeah, hopefully you're rewatching, encouraging you to think about your own ideas on this. Thank you. I know since I did that, well, life has gone by. It's about 2 years ago. So I did that near the beginning of the pandemic. I would love to do, not part 2 specifically, but I would love to do the next one in that mood. There's so many things to talk about, you know. I need to do beginnings part 3. I need to do the next one in the Meaning of Life type series. I need to do more David's Choice videos. And I need to get finished. We've already filmed most of the video, Suga-san making the chrysanthemums print. What's my personal schedule? This print now is the priority. And this now, it's Monday today. I have one more color block to go. And then I've got to fix the key block. As you saw, there's different fixing to do on the key block. So this is going to be out of my hands now in a couple of days. My next priority there, I've got to spend some time with the accounting guys upstairs because, as I said, it's our year end. That's going to happen as a priority. I've got to work on the ramen cats with Aimi-san, and then my priority has got to be video. I've got to get to the video editor and get the next video with Suga-san. No, before that there's one more priority. Our carver Kawasaki-san in Kobe, she sent me an email last night. She has finally finished the full set of carving on Kyoto Journey number 4. And Jed hasn't come up yet with Kyoto Journey number 5. He's not due for another few weeks. So our carver Kawasaki-san needs an intervening job. And I have prepared nothing yet. So actually today and or tomorrow I have to come up with a new project for Kawasaki-san. And coming up with a project is easy, but she needs a hanshita. She needs a tracing to paste on the block. And she's ready to go today. How am I going to get something ready for her at that stage, ready to carve by today? And Dave, as the owner of this place, this is my job. I knew this was coming. I didn't postpone it, just I knew this train was coming down the track. I just had to keep working on this. So that will have to get done first before the video editing. Is that somebody on the stairs? Someone just come in? Japanese to promote Japanese crafts and culture internationally. Yeah, that's a good thing that I'm doing. I mean, when I said that thing the other day about people who, whatever, might not agree with what I'm doing, that part of it is clear. And there are many, many people in the traditional craft scene here who do understand this and who get this, that I'm doing a wonderful job at helping promote Japanese culture overseas. Of course. That's the bare fact of it. The problem comes in that I myself personally, I'm kind of too good at this from some viewpoints. And it's okay when foreigners come and like stuff and they sort of get good at it and they join the sumo or whatever. But when it gets that foreigners are dominating something and the foreigners are all really good at this, that's when the sort of that type of person who feels strongly about Japanese culture, that's when it starts to get difficult for them. And I get that. So sure, I'm not sitting here in worry that somebody's going to firebomb my front door or something. No, of course not. I'm a huge asset to Japanese society, absolutely, from a rational point of view. But there is some emotional viewpoint to this too. But I think it's busy downstairs here. I'm sorry. I think it's busy. How do the Japanese feel towards you when it's traditional hand-carved prints by a Canadian? If you look at the media file, over on my woodblock.com website, there's a directory talking about press coverage. I forget what it's called, Woodblock Shimbun. And the funny thing is newspaper stories. There's a bunch of newspaper magazine stories there. And the person comes and writes the story about what I'm doing. Then the editor has to think about a title for the story. And I don't even know, 4, 5, 6 stories, without exaggeration, about 6 of those editors came up with the same story for this. The blue-eyed ukiyo-e craftsman. So this was it, the traditional prints hand-carved by Canadian. They're okay with this at that level. And remember, Japanese culture, you can make the argument that at heart, a lot of Japanese culture is sort of a little bit not so self-confident, not so secure. And when foreigners praise something about Japan, and this goes back 100 and X years, when foreigners praise something about Japanese culture, it helps for them validate it. You know, oh, you think it's okay? Good. It must be okay, because there is, compared to overseas people like French or Americans or whatever, who have brash self-confidence in their own culture. Japan has the feeling, contemporary Japan has the feeling that you're not allowed to be brashly self-confident about your stuff. So when foreigners come and praise it and look at it and work in it and do it, this helps the Japanese validate what they're doing. So there's this aspect of it that's always present. And because of this, I was able to get good media coverage. NHK loves me, the Yomiuri Shimbun loves me, you know, the sort of right-wing conservative type environments. They love me, because it validates what they're doing. Foreigner loves Japanese thing. Therefore, Japanese thing is good. It's this thing. It's, you know, I'm hugely generalizing. Each individual Japanese person walking down the street doesn't need my praise to validate their life. But this is a thing. It's absolutely a thing. John sort of got it, a huge national inferiority complex. You could argue it's not an inferiority complex. You could argue that it's more of a, what's that thing called when you look in the mirror and you feel like I shouldn't be here? What's the word? Imposter syndrome or something. I forget the word. Help me here. That's what it's more, because Japan is hugely successful. Culture goes all over the world. It's a wonderful society. People are not dying in the streets. You know, it's successful. But they sort of, again, I'm hugely generalizing. The culture as a whole doesn't see it this way. So for having foreigners, even on a very small scale, praise this and do this and say, wow, this is so cool, this helps mitigate to some small degree that imposter syndrome. But don't take what I've said out of context. This is I'm speaking really generally. But this is after 40 years of experience here. So. And it has helped me hugely. And you could argue that Dave there's a very hypocritical aspect to Dave's work here, because his, quote, success here is not simply due to maybe him being a hard worker and a good worker, but it's due to the fact that I happen to have lucked onto that one of these spots that's just the right place at the right time, where the media says, oh, here's another one of those guys. Let's show him on the front page, you know, because it fits into this thing that I've just mentioned. And it really did work that way. The very first flyer I sent to the media, I had made 1 or 2 prints in the Poets series. I was going to make a series of 100 prints, but I had made 1. I was working on the second one, and I sent a flyer out to the media. You're not supposed to blab about yourself, but I sent a flyer out to the media, NHK and all these places. Canadian woodblock printmaker announces 10-year project to create the 100 poets of Katsukawa Shuncho. Showed a picture of me with number 1, you know. And less than a week later, I'm on evening news, just because it pushes the right button. I don't know how true that is now. If I were starting today, announcing that kind of thing today and sending out the flyer, it's nowhere near the same now. Because back in the mid-1980s, that was more of an unusual thing, more of a big deal. Japan was a different place. So I'm not sure how much of what I'm blabbing about here really makes sense currently today. But that was my experience anyway. Literally, less than a week later, I was on the evening 7 o'clock news nationally. You know, I mean, just what? I couldn't speak Japanese to get out of a wet paper bag, too. Those were the days. I'm sorry, Aaron, I'm blabbing so much, but I'm missing commentary here. So there's probably lots of interesting comments about this, and I'm missing them at the moment. I will read this. Recently, I have been pretty good. I've been reading this around lunchtime, so I will pick up your comments here. Thank you. Even if I'm not responding to what you're saying here now, I will be catching up with this. Thank you very much. In those features on the news, was I speaking English or Japanese? I tried to speak Japanese. I know the first news reports, I came in '86. Didn't make prints yet. I was just fooling around making wooden toys, blah, blah, blah. That episode I'm talking to you about, announcing the series, getting on the news and the newspapers right away, that would have been the spring of 1989, summer of 1989. The news reports are on the website. So by then, I'd been here 3 years. I was not studying Japanese. I was speaking English in my English school every day. I was teaching English. So my Japanese was very, very, very poor. Pronunciation was just cringe-worthy. It's not great now, but back then it was cringeworthy. But people get this. They know. They're not worried about it. You know, you're sitting there in the TV studio, and they're helping you along. They're not out there to make you look like an idiot. They're out there to help you. And Japanese people themselves, because they think, oh my God, if that was my situation, I would be panicking. I couldn't speak English properly. They know how difficult it is. They feel it's more difficult than it is. So when they see a person stumbling through, trying to get the communication off, they help every step of the way. They pulled me along and helped me along. So it's okay, it's okay. They give you much more credit and friendliness when you're trying to speak Japanese than they will ever credit themselves when they were trying to speak English. You know? How did I go about learning Japanese? I moved to Japan. 4 words. I moved to Japan. That's it. Nothing else. I haven't studied it 1 minute since I got here. And I'm not that good at it. Conversation is 100% no problem. And reading is middle school level reading. Writing, I have no skill whatsoever. I can write my name and nothing else. I don't pretend cultural fluency. Can I communicate good enough to live and enjoy and run a business and employ 30 people? Yes, sir. Could I pass the proficiency exams? I don't have a clue. Probably not, because I haven't actually studied the kind of stuff that's on those examinations. I don't know. Many, many new foreigners here are way more proficient than me because they've done the right thing. They've like gone to college for 4 years to study Japanese, etc., etc. My generation didn't do that, or this guy didn't do that anyway. But no, can I get around? Yes, sir. It's still, though, it's still. The 5 of us, after the Jacollet, remember the Paul Jacollet exhibition we talked about? I went to the Jacollet exhibition with 4 of our printers, Japanese women. We're there, 3 Japanese women, Kawai-san, our male printer, and me. We go to the Jacollet exhibition, blah, 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 come out, we're in a restaurant, we're in a booth. They sit us in this booth. We went to Buttermilk Channel for lunch. We talked about this. And I was stuck in the middle of the booth, and the 2 women on my side and the other on the other side. And we ordered our lunch. It turns out that with the lunch, there's a standard drink set. You want coffee, blah, 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 blah. I actually didn't. I was really, really thirsty. So I ordered a beer, a non-alcoholic beer. They had, what's the Belgian beer? Belgian or Dutch? Pronunciation, help me. Heergarten. I don't know the pronunciation, but it was a 0 alcohol. So I've got this beer, and the other people had their tea and coffee. We put our orders in, bang. Partway through lunch there, the girl comes up. she's got her little bill in hand and whatever, and it's a little difficult. She's got a problem. And it turns out the problem is that when you have the lunch set, tea and coffee are okay, but the beer I ordered wasn't okay in the list of acceptable drinks to have as part of your set. It's a bit more. So she wanted to mention to us that the beer you ordered is going to be billed separately. Is that okay? I'm like, of course, whatever. I knew that when I ordered it. But she comes up, and the beer is in front of me. I had ordered it from her a minute ago. And she comes up the table, and she doesn't look at me. She looks at Ishikawa-san at my side and says, 申し訳ないんですが、Sakikaki-sanが頼んだビールは単品になりますから申し訳ないんです. She's saying the beer that you guys, the customers, ordered is going to be billed separately. But she doesn't look at me. She looks at the Japanese lady sitting by my side. And the Japanese lady answers, yes, daijoubu desu, we understand. So we get this. I was completely, totally fluent when I ordered this. If she was blind, she might have even thought I was Japanese. It was okay, you know. But still coming up, she wouldn't look at the foreigner. She looks at the Japanese person sitting next to me. So we couldn't help the joke. The girl goes away, and I look at Ishikawa and say, maybe she thinks you're my wife or something. And Ishikawa said, yeah, I guess so. I just dig her. So they won't look at you. They will talk to the Japanese person next to you. It's just always the case. It always has been the case, and it always will be. And I could be so fluent that I could read and write and pass any test in the country, and the little waitress girl still would probably speak to the Japanese person beside me. You just have to laugh about it. If you get upset about stuff like this, then you're going to be in big trouble. So, is it Belgian beer? Dutch beer? No, I don't even know. I'm sorry. I'm going to sit on the fence here. Someone says Dutch, someone says Belgian. I do not know. Yeah, you're talking logic. If they can hear you can speak Japanese. Remember, the face, our eyes, and the message we get visually is far stronger than other senses. And this girl is in a restaurant in Harajuku, which is full of foreigners. So day after day after day after day after day, she deals with foreigners who come in who can't speak Japanese. So cut the girl some slack. You know, I'm not here to insult her. I'm just laughing because it's a little bit of a giggle story that comes by again and again and again. The girl deals every day with foreigners who are there. Japanese friend has brought them in, and the foreigners can't speak anything, and the Japanese friend does all the interpretation. So cut her some slack there. Hogarten is both Dutch and Belgian, whatever, okay. That one I will keep out of. I like the taste of that. The little coffee shop across the street also serves it. And I like that beer. And I didn't know they had a non-alcohol version. And because we were having lunch and coming back to work, that was just fine. I was very happy to have the beer and very happy not to have the alcohol content. So. Having said that the other day, that I was able to converse with that waitress about the beer, it does happen the other way. A couple of days ago, I was out for dinner with Sadako-san. A couple of days ago, Saturday night, whatever. So we're at a local restaurant near here, and I screwed up. We go to the front door of the restaurant. It's kind of busy inside. There's a takeout window. And we go to the door, and the boy stops us, and he said something, and I didn't catch it. I thought what he was saying was we were full. I thought he was saying manseki, but it wasn't quite, that's not what he was saying. Or he was saying, whatever, there was 2 or 3 things that you could say in this. He was going to say, we're full, or he was going to say, please wait a minute, or I forget. But what he was asking actually was, did we have a reservation? And I didn't catch it. Sadako next to me, she caught it right away, but I didn't catch it. And and he had to repeat it. And I didn't get it for the second time. So at that point, he's speaking to the foreigner and he thinks now that guy doesn't get Japanese at all. So he switched. He looked to Sadako and she answered him. And I just stood on the side, just like the dumb tourist. It's my own fault. I didn't catch what he said. It was a normal phrase. He wasn't speaking anything strange, but he had simply said, do you have a reservation? And I hadn't been expecting it, and maybe it was noisy from the crowd or whatever. I don't know, but I didn't get it. So in this case, I have to accept this is not because of some Japanese refusal to speak to a foreigner. I screwed up. And after 2 attempts, if I didn't get it, then fair's game. He switches to the Japanese person. So someone's got 2 strikes, you're out. I mean, 1 strike, you're out would have been good enough. So it works both ways. I'm not trying to sit here and think all Japanese are stupid people who won't speak to me. That's not true. Yano-san, good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you doing, ma'am?
My tooth is back.
Your tooth is back. Is that public knowledge? I don't know what you were talking about. Go on, stuff's in my head.
Only Friday,
No, but these people don't know about that. So I don't know. I don't know.
I said my tooth came out.
I don't know. That's what I said. How much is public knowledge? I would not bring this up.
I just wanted to let you know that it's back.
If 99-year-old David here said I had a tooth fall out the other day or a crown fall off, nobody would be the wiser. But I didn't expect you to talk about that.
Yeah, I should have said crown instead of a tooth.
So. Let's re-roll this. Cut. Start again. Hello, Ayano. How you doing?
Hi, Dave-san. I'm good. English conversation class みたいな感じですね. But anyway, he put it back. He put the crown back that, just came out last Friday.
I didn't bring up this topic.
So I don't need to go back. I don't need to go back again. Yeah, it's
well, okay, if you've brought up the topic, I can say this. I was very surprised to find that a person your age, so young, has a crown already. This was surprising to me. I'm sorry.
It's not unusual, isn't it? It's
really?
better not to have a crown. But
I've got a bunch because in my era, dental care was British dental care was of course prehistoric.
I think I was kind of too late when I found the tooth decay. So
really?
Maybe I should have gone much earlier.
This is interesting. In my own experience, my parents lost a lot of their teeth really early. They were pre-war British culture, no dentistry. I was their child, so dental care as a child was really, really not good. By the time my own kids were born, it was modern Canada. Dental care was fabulous, and my kids grew up with no cavities, nothing. And to my knowledge now, they're still pretty much 100%. In Japan, I think it's lagging a little bit, and my own kids in school here met lots of friends with cavities or crying from tooth pain or stuff like this. So maybe you're part of that. You're a little bit, maybe your generation is a little bit behind.
So I didn't have any problems when I was younger, so I didn't really go to a dentist until I became age 22, 3. But that's not good either.
No, that's the difference, of course,
I didn't know what's going on.
Care and maintenance and
I don't like seeing a doctor to a dentist. They say something very, I don't know. I was like, please don't say I need to take a surgery. Please don't say.
Oh, you don't want the bad news.
I don't want to. Yeah.
So avoiding medical care, avoiding checking because you don't want to hear the bad news. Really? Wait a minute. That's guys. Guys, I'm bleeding a little bit. No, I'm okay. I'm okay. I don't need to go to the doctor. That's a guy thing, not a girl thing.
I don't want to go see a doctor. My mom works at a hospital. I've heard enough from my mom. She knows all those diseases because she works with a doctor. So as soon as she sees something happening in the body, she can tell oh, this is a blah 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 blah. I don't want to hear bad news. Just let it be. It will heal. Eventually, it will heal.
I don't believe what I'm hearing from a young, intelligent woman like this. That's not how it works. Tell Steve Jobs, pancreatic cancer, eat apples, it'll cure it. You won't, it'll kill you. If something seems to be wrong, go and get some professional advice. What's this 71-year-old dude saying this to a young woman? It's backwards,
Yeah, so this kid, I just don't want bad news. I got facial palsy 4 years ago, after COVID started. And I saw that in the morning in the mirror. I was like, well, half of my face is numb. What do I do? What's this? I wanted to hide it, so I kind of went out with cycling, avoiding my mom, but still, didn't get better. So I finally came to my mom. Hey, my face is numb. What's this? And she's like, oh, that's facial palsy. Well, you gotta go see a doctor as soon as possible, otherwise maybe the numb would, just...
do we need to say, of course. But come on, I understand, okay. Something is not quite normal. Okay, we don't know because we're not medical professionals. But so the common sense thing is go to a doctor. One of two things is gonna happen. It will be, quote, nothing, or it will go away naturally, in which case you didn't need to go, but now you know it's okay anyway. Or it could be that this is a sign of something that may be going wrong. But you know what happens? The earlier we catch these things, the better to show. We know these things.
We know this, kiddo.
You're speaking like a guy. I don't get. This is a guy in disguise.
And even the carpal tunnelですね. I went to see a doctor. Doctor says, okay, take this medicine, and if it doesn't, get better in like a month, surgery. I was like, no surgery, please. So I went to see an acupuncture.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! I'm going to get in trouble. Let's change the subject here. Let's change the subject because I'm going to get in trouble. Acupuncture. Give me a whatever.
いいですよ。
Give me a break.
Recommend.
Superstitious crap. Anyway, give me a break. Give me a break. It doesn't matter. We don't need to go there. We don't need to go there.
Bad experience ですか? Bad experience.
No, common sense. It's okay. How about your job? How about work? Are we okay? I see a bunch of orders over the weekend.
そうですね.
Nothing dramatic. Did you see the shop data?
No, not yet.
Another freaking 500,000. It just won't stop. Together. Another 500,000 yen of prints disappeared over the weekend,
Wow.
Oh, whatever. So
Until we finish the inventory adjustment, Teiko-san won't be able to order some prints from Ome, so let's...
What do you mean it won't be able to order prints from Ome? Today, get some prints from Ome, of course.
I thought we didn't want to move
July.
prints around.
It's finished. You move prints today, you book it July the 2nd, it's done.
Okay.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's it. We're out of stuff all over the place.
I'll
of course.
talk to other people because
Any adjustments made? We're going to make adjustments for last year for the corrections, but real life world prints are selling now based on July data. We restock based on July data. Kubota brought some prints. It's July data. It's got nothing to do with the inventory. Get to work. Normal work. Normal work.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I will let her know.
Yeah.
Okay. Ja.
Yeah, how's it go? Okay.
All right.
I've learned something about you today.
I'm just a kid this year.
Yeah, there was a couple of things I was supposed to ask you about, but I don't remember now. The conversation. Domo, thank you. Thank you. Tsushima-sanからです. Oh, yes, that's for you actually. So. The conversation you made blew out my normal.
Is there something related to work?
Yeah, but I can't remember. It'll come back. Whatever. It'll come back. Just no. As soon as you go upstairs, it'll come back.
Okay.
Your surprising conversation today, shook it out of my head. So.
Okay, this. Should I take? No, I should.
No, I'll open it and count them, but you know what it is. So, and also we need the blocks, and it looks like the blocks are not in that package. So. Anyway, no panic.
Okay, sorry.
But because Yuki-san has already started her next job.
Okay.
But this will be her next job after that. So.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
Actually, can you throw that package over here? Let me open that. Thank you, Ayana-san. Thank you. Before we start show and tell, let me crack this. It's not a super interesting Yahoo auction find, but a number of you will find it fun. Where were we before I was so rudely interrupted? I think I was done. No, I was just finishing this block. Look at that. I must have made the last stroke just as you came in the door. Thanks, Ayana-san. See you soon. Yep, thank you. We're done. Look at that. Conversations, my God, has it gone all over the world today? Has it gone all over the world? Really? All around the block. All right, that's done. This is also done. So that's 2 out of 4 are done. Color blocks. The key block is ready, unquote, but needs a bit of extra touch up. And then we have block number 3, which will be this one. And then I can show you, well, it isn't pasted down yet. Block number 4 will be this one. And what it is it's just showing the general location of the spots on the cat. And we're going to try doing this with 1 block. And I got to warn you, any of those of you who are collectors here, if you think back to print number 1, we had the Boda Vista riding on the dragon. You remember there was gray gradations in the original, and they didn't become full gradations in the print, and we can't do that. If I pop up the image here for a second, here's the sketch. Look at the left-hand cat. Those gray blobs are really watery gray. They have gradation. That's fine for a watercolor painting, but that's not how it's going to work in a woodblock print. And this area here, for example, is going to be dark with a fuzzy edge. It's not going to have all the wateriness and blotchiness in it that you see in the sketch. The forehead areas, they're going to be dark with a slightly fuzzy edge. They're not going to be anywhere near as delicately gradationed as you see in the original. We're not making a watercolor painting. We're making a woodblock print, and it's very small scale. There's no way we can do delicate gradation around this and then another delicate gradation here and then another delicate gradation here. That's not how this would have worked back in Hokusai's day, and it's not how we're going to do it. So those of you, just a heads up for those of you who are going to get this print, do not expect it to look like this. It's going to look different. It's going to be a woodblock print. Okay, we've got a few minutes left. I have a show and tell here. What have I got for show and tell? Oh, three things for show and tell. But we're going to go back to the Surimono albums. So show and tell today will be a mix of 3 different things. No, someone's saying hopefully not too dark. No, they will be gray. They will be a certain shade of gray. What shade of gray, yet to be determined. We will do the background, the leaves, and then I will play with those spots to see what looks viable. And this now is the second level of background. It'll deepen the background in some places. It'll leave the cat, so the cat will be lighter color than the background. These leaves, as you saw already, are going to be much, much darker, but we didn't want to stack up too many colors in one place. The stems are going to get darker by this. And the background leaves also are off this one. But the background leaves were also off, where am I? The background leaves were off this one. So we're going to have 2 tones of leaves. This will be the front side of the leaf, darker, and the back side of the leaf will just get the pigment from this one. So we should have, we think, an interesting thing, an interesting print. Let's just cut a few token lines here and then get going with our show and tell today. We don't need a ruler for a line like this. All we got to do is get it inside that thick black line. I don't need to worry about ruler straight here. Excuse me. Not sure why I'm hearing glass bottles. Thursday is the recyclable pickup day. Today, Monday, it's the first Monday in the month. And on the first and third Monday in the month, it's pickup of non-recyclable garbage. Things like broken umbrellas, fluorescent light bulbs, stuff like that. And to my knowledge, there shouldn't specifically be any things like glass bottles in there, but I hear that sound. Broken glass is supposed to go out today. Normal glass bottles go out for recycling, but if they're broken, you're supposed to put them with the non-recyclable garbage. You're supposed to put them in a small box, and you're supposed to mark on the outside, garasu, so that the guys, before they grab it with their hands, gloved hands, before they grab it, they know that it's broken glass inside. So that's today's garbage. Oh, it's gone already, is it? The truck came by? Because the little pack there. There was garbage here and there, right? Yeah, it's gone. So the truck must have come by. If I had all the time and resources in the world, would it be possible to make the gray areas much like a watercolor? Of course, tiny little brushes rubbing around, tiny little brushes. You could do anything given all the time and resources. But that's not what this print was designed as. We're not even going to think about doing that. Remember, in a normal environment, the consumers, the people receiving the print, wouldn't see those original sketches. So take that out of your mind, That sketch it's a blueprint. It's nothing to do with the actual print itself. Look at this. Okay, show and tell. 3 things then. We have our show and tell folder. We have that little box that just came from Ome. And somebody asked, and anyway, I also want to do this. I want to recap just one quick second the leftover stuff that we had from yesterday's show and tell. Or not yesterday, but the day before's show and tell. Remember, I pulled off the chrysanthemum print and I didn't manage to get it through successful. And I'd just like to show you the actual result. Here's the print that we pulled up. As you saw, it didn't make it through the head part, and there's a reason why. And it's all down to me. When I did the first one that morning, before the stream started, I had been pulling it off. I started in the same corner and pulled it off bit by bit by bit by bit. And when I got to the open area here, I had felt that it was pulling up too much. And you can see there's fibers here that got left behind. And I felt that the fibers hadn't been pulled off that should have been pulled off. The area where it's fully printed separated smoothly and easily, but the area where there was no pigment left behind. So when it came time to do the second one, the one that was happening live, I remembered that experience. And I remembered, or I felt, that when I got to the area where there was no pigment, Dave, please remember, try and pull off more of the backing paper. And here we are. We were pulling off like this. We started in this corner, we pulled up, and then when we got to the backing paper, you can see it, this is the backing paper. Remember, it got left behind and I pulled up more. I pulled more backing paper off because of my previous experience at leaving too much there. And I did this too much. I pulled off too much of the backing paper. And you can perhaps see, look at this. You can see actually, that was okay. Up here, look at it, there's nothing left. Now I couldn't really see what was going on. It was all wet at that time, but it's clear now, the post-mortem, up in this top edge here, I pulled off way too much. I used my finger and I pulled up too much washi. And it was way too thin. And then by the time we hit the area where it had been printed, boom, it was game over and it pulled everything off. As I came up here, it pulled everything off. And this part now has the real print paper still stuck on the front of it. So that was my mistake. I mean, this isn't something we do with all our prints. This isn't part of our normal construction process. It was all just for fun to try and make a thin version of the print. So I did 2. I got okay with 1 and I struck out. So 1 home run and 1 strikeout, or whatever, ball 1, strike 1, whatever game you want to play. You can see it now. It was just too thin. So it's your call if you want to try this yourself. There's a fine line about how much you can pull off and how much you can't, and it's all down to experience. And even the guy with experience here, it's not something I do every day, but even the guy with experience still, you know the phrase, desho? Ki kara saru mo ochiru. Okay, this is another package from one of our printers. At the beginning of the stream, we opened the package from Kubota-san. This is a package from Tsushima-san. She's the printer who works in our Ome workshop. And on Insta the other day, Ayano-san showed a couple of pictures from our old Ome workshop back in the whenever it was, 10 years ago. And in those pictures, Tsushima-san was working. Patreon chibi prints. You saw them carved. Did you see test printing? I don't remember. It's so long ago now, months ago. Patreon chibi prints in their raw, uncut form. If you're expecting a Patreon chibi print to be sent to you sometime soon, if you want the surprise, then close your eyes or leave here. You're not going to ever see it in this form. This is the uncut form. She's put a couple upside down. Let's put them at the back. Here is the raw, never before seen in public, uncut form of our Patreon chibi prints. And Tsushima-san has done a nice job bringing them in. And it's the same story as always. We want the prints always to be the same color, but this time round, when I told the printers I want these the same color, I said S-A-M-E. These must be the same color, because this is coming to my desk later today or tomorrow. I'm going to chop these in half. And the top half is going to go as our summer Patreon chibi, summer 2023. And the bottom half will go into storage and it will be sent out 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, the winter chibi. And there's no way in the world that we can do the bookkeeping and inventory control to make sure Mr. X gets this one and we cut it and send it now, and then that copy is the one for Mr. X 3 months from now. There's just no way. So I've told our printers I want 0 color variation. Don't start deep on this and get deeper as it goes on, because then the person who might get a light one, later they get a deeper one, when they put them back together 3 months from now, the colors won't match. So the printers have been told on this one, perfect depth, perfect color tones, no variation, or, and so far they have done so. So we've shipped a bunch of these already. We've shipped how many? I don't even know. 300 we've shipped already, the top one. There's another 100 copies here, or 80 copies. She sent 20 or so the other day. This is another 80. These will now go out in July. And then starting later this fall, November, December, January, February, whatever, the bottom ones will go out to nearly all the Patreon supporters. And, you know, whatever, it's the joke. It's John Amos's joke, the creation of the great wave. It's supposed to be Hokusai. I mean, of course, it's not. Hokusai didn't work at a bench like this or whatever. It doesn't make any difference. Hokusai had no pigments like this. Doesn't matter. It's a gag. This is a gag. Hokusai's cat knocked over a bowl of blue pigment and made a certain shape, and Hokusai took that and ran with it. The rest is history. It's a good gag. At least I think it's a good gag. Enough that I can make 600 copies of it. It's so good. It's not my idea. Totally John Amos's idea. He sent it over and said, "What do you think, Dave?" And I doubled over and I said, "You are in. You're in." John's a nice guy. He's a good guy. He's very self-effacing. He won't talk about his own work at all. My God, if he would just do some better video and talk to the camera. But he won't do that. He shows his work. He doesn't want to show himself. And as a result, nobody in the world knows about what he's doing. People don't want interesting prints. They want interesting people. They want stories. They want to hear what you're doing. John, show your face. But he won't do it. Okay, we've come along through our Surimono albums. Here we are. This is, to recap again, it's the 5 albums I made from the year 1999, 2001, 2, 3. Yeah, so this is the set of prints that I made in 2003. It was a set of 10 prints. We've been looking through these, 1, 2, 3, 4. These were sort of Dave's ultimate challenge to the technique. I had made my 10-year print series, got pretty good at some fundamentals, but was missing experience at making many different kinds of things, different kinds of gradations, different kinds of carving, different kinds of overlays for color, different kinds of stylistic carving, different kinds of lines. And this 5-year project to make 50 prints was my self-inflicted, very strong apprenticeship. I challenged 50 prints that were all more difficult than I could do. And I just, whatever, I walked back and forth the Grand Canyon on a high wire rack 50 times. Slipped a little bit. A couple of them I had to carve, whatever. Some of the boys and ox I had to carve twice. Something else I screwed up, whatever. I did slip and fall a few times. But the 50-year challenge, a 5-year challenge to make 50 prints. And that absolutely is what put me at the level where I am today, because I'm slipping now, but whatever. Okay, partway along, we had this little thing. This is a funny little trivial print. The self-guided theme through the series was that every year the 5th print had to be something to do with a fan design. The first year had a fan like this. The second year had a fan like this, a Hiroshige design. The third year, the fan print was a self-made-up design of small Senshafta prints. The 4th year, the fan was put together with some small Shote prints. So when the 5th year came along, I had to have something to do with a fan. And in that folder that I showed you a few days ago, I have a folder of Taisho era reproductions. I didn't own all these at that time, but I had this object. It was a woodblock print made somewhere pre-war. And I got it from a copy of a bunch of stuff that I found from a workshop that had been making fans. And we've got the box upstairs. There's a bunch of woodblock prints. There's half-finished woodblock prints. There's sketches. There's little bits of bamboo that they stick on. And they made the prints on a thick paper, 2-layer paper. And when the prints were done, they stuck bits of bamboo inside and folded them up and turned them into actual fans for sale. So this would have been an object that would have been not sold in this form. It would have been sold as a sensu, one of those fans. So when I saw this in my junk box, I thought, hey, no way, this will do perfect for my fan reproduction. So I did. Get it back out of sight before I break it. And there's an interesting twist to the story. I should have made a link here. Maybe somebody can find it, maybe not. I don't know. I have no idea. This is how I made them. Now, in the old days, I didn't know this at the time, but in the old days when fans were printed, they put the registration marks up at the top and they printed them like this. It's the best way to save paper. You don't need to have this bottom part. I didn't know that, so I made it in what I thought was a straight ahead way with a registration mark at the bottom. And because I also thought making that gradation here would be a suitable way, because this is the way our hands work. I thought it would be a good idea to have the fan shape. So what I did was I made a Lazy Susan. There must be a link on the website. I'll try and remember. We'll talk about it again on the next stream. I'll link back to it. I made a Lazy Susan, put the wood block on it, and that's how with one hand I rotated the table, the other hand I held the brush steady, and that's how I got the gradation. I didn't have to make a curved gradation. The table was turning and the brush was staying the same. And we still have it. The Lazy Susan is still over in my Ome workshop, and if we ever have to reprint some of these, we will use it again. Someone's got the link. Chicken Meister, oh my God, you're collecting eggs. That's worth a double-size egg. To find that and pull that up that fast, thank you, sir. Thank you. If Chicken Meister is a sir, whatever, it doesn't make any difference. Thank you. And then when I sent them out to customers, we didn't fold them. I trimmed them to this shape, and they mounted in the album, and away they went. And for myself, just for fun, I folded one up to try and see how it would look as an actual fan if we were doing it. But I never made any fans. I should do that, actually. I should get some bamboo and make an actual fan out of it. All good fun. And that's the point of that series, that 50 print series. It was just to grab anything and everything, challenge it, figure out how to do it, and come out the other end as what I like to have thought of myself as an ichininmai, a shokunin. You're a full, all-round shokunin. Because at the beginning of it, I knew nothing. I had a base of how to cut something and how to put print on paper, pigment on paper, but I knew nothing about all these techniques. A 5-year, self-inflicted self-inflicted, what's the word? Self-designed, self-guided, self-constructed, very, very serious apprenticeship, stronger than any traditional apprenticeship would ever have been. And it worked. It worked. The prints are there. Surimono, under woodblock.com, Surimono album. The prints are there. And we'll see, there's a few more left. We'll see them in some subsequent streams. Okay, it's 9:30. Here we are. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's Monday morning. I'll see you 3 days from now. That's Aoyama-san coming upstairs. We have some discussions this morning about the rent. Okay, here we go. See you on Thursday morning, 3 days from now. Thank you very much. If I've missed any chocolate eggs going out, there's a basket on the table. You know where to pick them up from. Thanks again to the mods for the help. Okay, guys, thank you very much. I'll see you. Oh, wait, before I go, just a minute. Somebody's asking about a missing chibi print. If you have started later or something in the chibis, this happens sometimes to people. They started later and they missed the summer one and got only the winter one. Write to Ayano-san. Just write to us. Write to Ayano. Tell her the story. Sob a bit. And she will take care of you. Okay, thanks, guys. See you next time. Bye for now. My guess is he's looking for... My guess is he's looking for cigarette butts, but I really don't know. Maybe. Your guess is as good as mine. Cigarette butts, I think. Okay, bye for now.